Good morning. Welcome to SafeDefend Live. I am Dave Evans with the founder and king of SafeDefend, the brilliant mind that shows us what we can do for school safety. And today we're going to talk about something that you need to hear as families, as school leaders, as community leaders. And it's this: the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. And I would argue to Jeff that for the last 20 years, when it comes to active shooter incidents and school safety, we have responded the same way by trying to build new gadgets and new things that will save lives after the event starts. But we haven't really focused on the winning formula to save our children and families from harm and injury. What do you think, Jeff?
Honestly, the only thing I disagree in that statement is that it's probably been longer than 20 years.
Okay.
So, if you look at Columbine in 1997, even the precursor to that, military or not military, law enforcement tactics definitely have evolved as far as their response. But we have focused on notifying and locking out the problems, just a notification solution, and let's lock the problem out. And that has been proven over and over again to not really be an effective solution in any capacity. And I think that's why we're super excited about how we've evolved here at SafeDefend. We truly have narrowed down a formula that will ensure a school can be the safest place possible for kids against an active shooter, active killer, or mass casualty type crisis in response. And honestly, this applies to even weather crisis, any other crisis that they may have to deal with. Having these four components, these four pillars in place, will make a difference. And no one else in the marketplace out here in the school safety world is addressing this. We're still throwing notification at it. We're going to lock down the building, which they both have a role, but in isolation, they are not going to make a difference. And that has been proven the case over and over again.
Well, we never address the root cause, and we just focus on what do we do after the event starts, right?
Sure.
I mean, when we look Absolutely. At this is more than just the shooting. This is all the stuff that happens before and after that event. And are you prepared as a school leader to identify the potential challenges, prepare your staff to handle that, then respond both internally and externally? And you're going to talk about the formula a little bit, and it addresses those four key areas. But the thing I love about this in our conversations is how we are now focused as a company and as an organization on really keeping people safe and helping people get the help they need before the trigger happens and they go and do something that changes their life and a bunch of other families' lives.
100%. Well, the absolute best way to ensure a safe school environment is prevention. And we've got the leading guru with the experience who has established a process that really is effective at identifying threats, intervening early, preventing that level of violence from ever coming through your doors. For the most part, we know that over 90% of these happen internally. Now, there are some outliers and some external things that really are outside the school's control, and you don't have a lot of control over who may want to do bad things that's outside of the school. But that's where the internal and external response comes in play. But if we can focus on prevention initially, that is the biggest differential and difference maker there is in school safety. But we know we can't rely 100% on prevention. We know that's just not going to be the case. That's those outside influences that bad actors that want to come in and do bad things, or a domestic issue spilled over into the school that isn't related to something going on directly from a student or inside the school. So you've got to have the preparation component in there, and that's your layers, right? That's really where your layers of prevention come into place that support the prevention side of things. But that's your training. That is having your access control. That is having a notification component in place. That is drilling and practicing, not with people coming in and shooting off blanks and causing chaos and scaring, but mental exercises, roundtable discussions, testing your system and at different times with the understanding that everybody knows this is a drill, just to be able to prepare them for that worst case scenario. You know, we've talked over and over again about possibility and probability, right? The probability is still very low. Schools are still very safe places to be. But the possibility exists, and it continues to increase as a possible scenario of something bad happening in a school setting that, you know, that you're teaching in, that you're close to, that you're connected to. And so we've got to have that insurance. We've got to have that plan in place, because schools tend to be reactive in nature rather than proactive. We are starting to see a shift in that regard, but we're still in that model of, hey, you know, I'm going to hedge my bet that it's not going to happen here. And so, you know, is that a bet you want to bet on now? You know, 20 years ago, it was probably less likely. And that probably was a much better bet. Nowadays, that's not a good bet. And, you know, we hope by, you know, helping on the prevention side, helping on the preparation side, then I'll get into the internal and external response here in a second, but having all those in place, you know what, we hope you go forever and never have to experience anything where you have to utilize that skill set or that notification or that training in real life. And so, you know, that's the goal, right? If we can prevent it, if we can be prepared for it, and if we can deter it, then absolutely, that is a win-win. And what's that worth, right? So, so the prevention side is absolutely the best place to keep students and staff members safe. The next best place to really focus on is the internal response, because when an event happens, you know, law enforcement isn't notified when they walk through the door. You know, there's typically that delay, depending on the notification solution. Now ours
Up
takes
to 8
place
minutes, can be 8 to 11 minutes.
11 minutes
more
in
some places.
Nashville, before law enforcement was able to show up.
And Nashville's response was phenomenal.
Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah.
But they've got to be able to get there. You know, we talk about this as an example. If an officer is 1 mile away from a school in a town or city, they have to average 60 miles an hour to be able to get there within 1 minute after being notified. That's just not going to happen, even being 1 mile away. So you're minutes out from the ability to have law enforcement help. So how do you manage that? That is the next best place to save lives, is having staff have the notification capabilities of knowing what's going on and where, having that ability to manage that crisis with training, with tools, with response options, with an understanding of how to protect their kids in the classroom, when to leave, when not to leave, you know, what constitutes a safe environment, having all of that understanding, that absolutely is the next best protection option for saving lives, getting students and staff members home. And then that external response, if we can shorten that time gap when law enforcement gets notified, when they can get there to the place that they need to get to as quickly as possible, you know, that's ultimately when it ends. But there is no one else in this space that has looked at this globally, has looked at this from let's talk prevention to let's talk response, and really found out what is going to make a difference in being able to address all four of those components. And SafeDefend has done it. And we're pretty excited about how we're going to be able to roll this message out to schools everywhere.
So the formula is this: prevention plus preparation plus internal response plus external response, right?
100%.
And what's interesting about this, if you go back to 1980 when we were kids, for a fire alarm, we talked about prevention. We prepared. We did drills, right?
Yes.
We had an internal response to the alarm went off. We all got in line. We walked out of the building. We practiced that. No stress. We just kind of little kids just walking out the building. And then we talked about the time it would take for the fire department to get there. Same thing for nuclear fallout. Remember the nuclear fallout drills back in the 70s when we were kids in elementary school? You know, are nuclear bombs scary, Jeff? Would that be scary as a 7-year-old kid?
100%.
Pretty scary. But we had drills and we talked about building shelters and going out. So we need to treat our kids like we were treated, with respect and dignity, and talk about prevention. What does that look like? what does it mean to drill and prepare? And don't do it in a way where you have guns and blood, and just do a walkthrough. You know, if this happens, this is what we're going to do, right? If this happens, these are the next steps. This is what you should expect. It's no big deal. We got to, and I think most teachers today are nervous because they don't have a plan. They aren't prepared. So they're anxious about any event, and anxiety is a bigger thing today than it was when we were kids. We weren't allowed to be anxious apparently back in the 70s. But today we are, and we're more sensitive to those things.
Well,
so I love what you're doing here. I love it to death. So
well, and you absolutely hit the nail on the head when you talked about, this has really been the fire protection formula, and it has made an absolute difference. It has never been identified as that and broken out as that. But if we look at the impact, the positive impact that it, those 4 pillars really could be applied to how fire departments approach safety in schools. 100% change in outcome. We've not had a serious injury or death since the 50s, late 50s, from a school fire. So we know these 4 pillars work. Now we've truly identified them in a component way to be able to say, hey, look, we can manage a safe school environment if we really approach it with these 4 pillars in mind. Back to your 80s, 70s, and 80s kids. Although I did feel like I was the chance of catching fire as a kid was really high back then, because they always talk stop, drop, and roll. That was on every TV. Yeah, I did think I was really a lot more likely to.
But
catch
you knew
fire
what to do if you caught on fire.
I did. So yeah, 100%. I was prepared to stop, drop, and roll. I had that down. So fortunately, we haven't had a lot of kids catch fire, and so that is a good thing. Maybe that's because of the stop, drop, and roll. Maybe, who knows? But no, but in all reality, we have truly found the path to making schools safe. And yes, it's a little bit of work. Yes, it's a little bit of investment, but at the same time, you know that you're sending your son or daughter to a school that has focused on making that environment the safest environment as possible. And teachers will be the first to tell you if a kid is nervous or worried, or if I'm worried about my safety, there is not an ounce of learning that can take place in that building.
That's a fact. And I'm going to ask anybody listening to this today, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Let us know what you think about this idea of really focusing on those 4 pillars and getting our kids and our teachers comfortable with walking through these drills. So when it happens, it's a reflex, it's a response. There's no anxiety. They know exactly what to do, and we can save more lives. More importantly, we can probably prevent a lot of incidents before they ever even happen.
Absolutely. Well, and as SafeDefend continues to evolve, when we see our competitors out there, they're focused on one aspect, and they're not providing that training, and they're not providing even reassurance in their system as they come through, and we just get feedback over and over again that, man, this is just not what we thought it was going to be, and this is not the solution that we need. And it's because, you know what, we're seeing our competitors not focus on what really is going to make a difference, and that's what SafeDefend has found and focused on, and that's where we are different than anybody else.
Well, and I don't want to be disrespectful to our competitors. They're great people trying to do a great thing for the schools and help people. One of my concerns, and we're seeing it through the police departments and discussions we're having, some systems are causing fog and confusion,
false alarms
and false alarms and whatnot. And honestly, that is a concern to me more than anything else, because you can't. When the alarm goes off for this, it has to be right. It's like a fire alarm. When the fire alarm goes off, it can't be a false fire alarm, because if it is, people get desensitized to it and they stop listening to it. I have been there. In my college, people like to mess with the fire alarms at 2 a.m. and evacuate the building. After a while, we stayed in bed, even though we were supposed to, right? Well, that is not what we need happening when an alarm happens for a fire alarm or an active shooter. It has to be for something important where there's a sense of urgency and people know this is really real. I will give you a great example. In combat, when the air raid sirens went off, you knew it was time to hit the bunker because there was something coming in, right? There was no question. You got your butt out of bed or your tent and ran to the nearest hardened shelter. And that's what I want to see for school safety. I want people to know exactly what to do, to be comfortable in what to do. And when they hear that alarm, they run to where they need to run and lock themselves down to be safe.
Well, and as a parent, it is completely fair for you to go in and ask your administration, hey, how are we working to prevent this? How are we working to prepare? And how are we going to respond if, God forbid, something happens? And that's a legitimate question to be asking.
It is. Well, Jeff, I'm excited about the SafeDefend formula. It is awesome. It is definitely something we need to get in every school in the United States. And if you're a school leader, then you need to find companies that can do this for you. If not, you're really failing your kids and your families, in my opinion.
Spend a lot of money in the wrong direction. Yep.
And spend a lot of money that can be spent better elsewhere. So with that, Jeff, great. Another SafeDefend Live. Look forward to seeing you next week. We are out of here.